Good. Okay. You're ready to go. All right. Today's date is Wednesday, March 9th, and it is 3:02. We welcome you to our board meeting, and we have in attendance Mary Shumway. She's virtual. We have Steve Black. We have Lori on, board member. And you said Nelson is not on yet?
Correct.
Okay, and Lucille is in transit. And other staff, and we appreciate you being here. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved.
I second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we will turn the time over to you, Superintendent, for the West update.
Yes, I'd like to highlight, first of all, I'd like to highlight Miss Georgiana Simpson, who has been chosen for the High School Art Educator of the Year for the Utah Art Education Association. I think that's fabulous, and I'm very much aware of the amazing things that happen in her classroom. And I'd like to certainly recognize her in this achievement, this recognition. I'd also, though, like to spread that recognition out to our art programs throughout the district, and also the things happening in the area of fine arts in all of our schools. Because we value fine arts, and we've done a lot to try to ensure that they are in our classrooms. And a few years ago, we made a decision to use some of our NEST money, and some of that would then bring art teachers back and ensure that it's in our secondary schools. And then we've worked in our elementary grades to try to make sure we have fine arts and implement it across the curriculum. So there's great things happening, and I really appreciate these efforts that are going on around the district. And sometimes with all the pressure in the tested areas, and sometimes with all the focus on extracurricular and other areas, sometimes this area does not get recognized or acknowledged. And I want to make sure that we realize there's great things happening and recognize those educators that are doing a great job.
Okay. Thank you, and that is a great accomplishment for Mrs. Simpson, yes. So, okay, we now go to our board discussion. So we have the COVID-19 reentry plan. Do we have anything update on that?
It's probably the best report I could bring to you since this started. We have very few cases. You do see some numbers there that were taken when I did the agenda yesterday, and that's at 6, but I think it's actually even lower today. The county numbers are as low as they've been in the last probably 2 months. I think it was 71 total countywide. That's down from 650 just 3 to 4 to 5 weeks ago. So there's been a pretty significant decline. And anyway, I definitely want to knock on wood, but there's certainly a little bit more feeling of getting to the normal things that we were focused on before. And we won't drop our guard. We won't quit doing the things that we know we need to do that are in our plan. But it is very encouraging at this moment. So that's about all I have to report.
Okay. Any questions? Mary, any questions?
No.
Thank you. All right. We're going to go to the school land trusts. This actually, we discussed this last month, if I recall, but it was not an action item. So we just need to bring that up real quickly. So we're going to just highlight that.
Yeah, it's exactly what you just said. It was just missed as an action item. We kind of unofficially approved it, and we've moved ahead with advertising those dates. So this is on there as an action item. I'm hoping when it comes up as an action item, it can be a quick motion and a second and a quick vote, because you did discuss and approve this last month.
Okay. Questions? All right. All right, number 3, we're going to go to our capital plan work session. Mr. Pemberton,
I'll lead out on this one.
Okay.
So you'll see on your agenda there the capital projects and fund analysis. And that's where we'll just kind of start. If you look on the far right side of that page, you'll see the budget breakdown, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at with capital funding. Our revenues, and these are conservative numbers from the last couple of years that we've used, but kind of an average conservative figure. Local funds is 1.8 million. State has was 800,000 this year, and federal at 2 million, and that comes from our impact aid funding that we contribute. So our total revenue is at the 4.6 million. And then the ongoing expenses I included there, that's what we've budgeted in the past for ongoing expenses across the board for different things. And those total ongoing expenses are 1.4, so 1.4 million dollars, which leaves us, $3.1 million annually that we're kind of putting aside for major capital projects. You'll notice also on that right-hand side below there, this was a bill that was passed that we'll talk about a little bit later, but there's also one-time appropriation for capital expenditures, and our estimated allocations around $800,000 in that one-time appropriation. That has not been included in any of the calculations on this spreadsheet. I just put that there as a note, but it's not been included anywhere as far as revenue or to be considered.
Have we received that actually?
No.
Dates? When does that come in?
So that was just passed in the
Okay.
legislative
Oh,
session. And so the state isn't even, like, we haven't even gotten direction on how that will be distributed, but that's our estimate of what we would be receiving come the new fiscal year in FY23
Okay.
for next school year. So that's just a note, just an item there, but it's the reason it's not included anywhere is because we haven't received final how that'll be allocated.
Okay.
And then off to the left there, you'll see the starting revenue for FY23, estimated at 23 million between the capital fund and our building reserve fund, which we use for capital purposes. And then you'll see there just kind of a calendar outline of different major capital projects that were presented last month. And just for a note, this is just kind of what we've been putting together. We've had multiple meetings at the administrative level to discuss these. This isn't necessarily our final recommendation as far as priorities goes. This is just to give us an idea of what we're looking at as far as funding and expenditures go for some of these projects. And so you'll see there, some of those projects that were mentioned: Bus Barn, Montezuma Creek Elementary, ARL, entryways for MHS and SJH, LaSalle, a new school, and then replacing what we currently have for our maintenance department, tech and media, and a district office replacement are some of the major things that we had on our list from last month. And that's kind of shows you where we would be at as far as end of year balances if we did that and stayed on that schedule there. And then as you go further right in the spreadsheet for the calculations, you'll notice that I put in there a cost of Lanning Elementary School. And that was an estimated cost of 35 million. And you'll notice, I've included a cost with a 4% annual inflation, which is what we've kind of received as an industry standard for inflation for construction. And what that cost would be over the next 20 years, looking at it. So that's kind of what we're wrestling with right now as an administrative staff is how to best go about doing this. If planning elementaries is priority, you can see it's kind of the elephant in the room in a way. It was that way 7 years ago. It's whether it's first or it's last, and we've kind of put it as last, and now we're kind of back at the same thing where we don't have enough funding set aside as under the way we currently operate to replace that school. Just as holding the status quo and doing what we've been doing. There was another spreadsheet that I attached that had no projects. And that one was just to kind of give you an idea, with Lanning Elementary, that we would be able to build that, just doing the bare minimum and just saving away. We would be looking at FY31, 32 before that could be completed. So that's just kind of a breakdown, just gives you an idea of kind of where we're at with funding with some of these projects. Below that, in the blue is a recommendation from Tom that he's provided with, if we just kept with our current kind of status of where we've been remodeling buildings and replacing buildings based on historical data, that would be kind of the schedule for each of these different locations, including housing, when we would remodel and replace housing below, just to give you an idea as far as looking many, many years in the future is what we'd be, but it's where there's so many moving parts, it's difficult to kind of look at funding for all of those different projects right now, where we're dealing with the ones kind of our main priorities right now to give a funding breakdown for each one of those major remodels or replacements. And then the final spreadsheet that's attached to your agenda is just the square footage per student, just to give you an idea of breakdown of where we're at on a square footage basis. Though that ADM is the average daily membership that was taken, that was done in the fall of this school year. So those are those numbers from the fall, the same as what we put on the last one as October of 21. So that's kind of where we're at as far as square footage. I told you I'd bring that back. I think Mary had a question about it last month, and that's just kind of a breakdown of where we're at. It gives a school ranking by square footage.
You know, we went over this and I thought it was very helpful to me to kind of see on a visual, you know, really what is our task at hand. And this kind of, at least I felt like, put it in a very visual form that I could kind of wrap my mind around a little better. So we felt like it might be helpful to the board to see it in the same light. That's why we brought this back. We're still going to dig a little deeper on, you know, there's other pathways to bring into question here. You know, the districts utilize, there's bonds, there's other things, and to learn more about those other pathways and then to bring that, we will certainly research those and bring those. But you can just see at a visual there at one glance, it's pretty challenging with what we know. If we are looking at rebuilding Blanding Elementary, which is our recommendation, even if we were to be remodeling Blanding Elementary, the price tag would be very high. And so with inflation and the cost of, you know, that going up, and then with some ongoing needs, it's tricky. It's a real challenge. And so we're going to have to just make some decisions and some look at things and decide. And, you know, 7 years ago, I know that the board very much went through a similar process. This is very similar to a spreadsheet that they were looking at back then. And the comment was made in that meeting, Blanding Elementary's either got to be first or last. But what they had a little different than what we have now is they had some other buildings to build that were much more reasonable in savings for. That's when we turned to TES, Monticello Elementary, and Bluff Elementary. Those no longer are on the list. So but we were not prepared to bring it as a proposal to you today, but we didn't want to bring this information to you. And as we work through this process and bring more information in light to us, we'd like to bring it to you as a board and keep you current with some of the things. And if you have any questions or concerns, we try to answer those.
So I guess my question is do we do have a priority list, or we don't, or can we create one?
Yeah, I think that's what Superintendent's saying is if we wanted to kind of get the feel for the board, if the board has any recommendations or insight to what their thoughts are on this process, but then next month, hopefully we'd be able to bring you back.
This list right here is evident of what I would call a rough draft priority list. I wouldn't say we've said, but as we got together and looked at it, we did feel like this in the initial review of our challenge looked like the most logical way to go. You'll notice that there's ARL, HAVAC at the very top. That's mandatory. We are limping along in that building right now. That's going to have to be done. The bus barn has already been identified years ago as way small for the amount of buses and work that go through there. So we actually, as we talked, placed that as a very high priority. And this is pretty, we didn't lock it in, but if you were to say, how are you leaning? This is certainly how we were leaning as a priority list. Now, where exactly it gets done, does it get bumped down? You know, we've also got this in there as a short-term, mid-range, and a long-term project. There could be some changing of that, certainly. We also just kind of said, this might be a place to start. Let's put it on the paper and start looking at it. And that's how it is right now, as a starting point. But that's kind of what we were looking at.
So, and then you put the yes at the top of that.
That is a good question. We really have not answered that question because as you can see, the second sheet shows you that we only did what we had to, HVAC at ARL, which has to happen, or we were gonna have one cold winter next year. Even if we just did that, we wanted to know what would it look like if we put Blanding
Right.
Elementary at the very beginning, other than what has to happen. And as Tyrell said, fiscal year 31, was it? We would have enough funds saved. If we continue with the save mode. Now, you could look at some other options that we'll explore and bring more information. Maybe there's a bond for a portion of that, maybe not all of it. But, and I don't know, I'm just saying there's things we can at least make sure the board's aware of all options.
But then in 31, 32, your costs, you're paying how much more by then?
So this is,
No.
that's
That's
what she
factored
takes it
in
in,
right
right? I did factor that in with
4%.
inflation.
Yeah.
It's at a 4% rate, so you'll see the cost of Blanding Elementary School is increasing by 4% on an annual basis, and so that's what the cost will be in.
Right.
That's why FY 31 is what the date, that's taking into savings and the inflation.
Question C.
Well, I just wanted to bring up, maybe question the methodology here a little bit. Let's look at the first one. Ones with the colors and with all the other projects. So you have revenue starting at 23 million, beginning balance, and you have the 3,000 going on for about 20 years. And then you have the expenditure column. You have those items in today's dollars, I assume as well.
Right.
So you have today's dollars as revenue, today's dollars as expenditures. And then you have an end of your fund balance in today's dollars. And then you have cost of Blanding Elementary School in future dollars. And so adding them together at that point, the estimated amount needed to be BES, mixing together. In my mind, that's apples and oranges.
The reason behind some of that methodology, and I agree with you, is just with Blanding Elementary, it's a little bit easier to say, okay, this is our future, what it would cost. With funding from and revenue sources from what we've got, it's really difficult to determine what would be increasing. There's so many moving parts, like we could see a major increase in capital expenditures that are funding and support received from the state level. That's just kind of, we just went with a really conservative number of revenue from what we've been seeing. So without it, that's not accounting for any future growth that we might see in funding and support from the state or federal level.
Now, we could go in and put the annual inflation cost to the projects. We could certainly do that easy enough, and that's a good catch. But to estimate the increase in revenue could be tricky.
Well, what you're doing by not changing it is saying, okay, in 20 years, we're going to have
The same.
economically half as much as we have now.
Do you have any knowledge of how best we would project that revenue increase? Should we look at the same type of a percent?
Well, if you applied the same type of percent to both the cost of the elementary school and to the revenue figures, projecting them out to future dollars. Might as well just keep everything and bring everything back to today to evaluate. So dollar wise, it wouldn't be that amount, but in fiscal year 43, you'd probably need to pay 79 million to build an elementary school, but economically in today's dollars, it would be 79 million. So if you just showed everything, bring everything back to today, I think that oftentimes facilitates the decision-making process.
And we could do that, just just take out the cost of inflation with Blanding Elementary. Maybe that would make it. I know the Blanding Elementary cost, we believe, has in it, even that there would be a gym added onto that. And I think Mary wanted to talk a little bit about that. I don't know if you're.
Mary?
Yeah. Are you ready for that?
Did you want to speak to that?
Yes. So, the current model when we've replaced elementary schools was to have an auxiliary gym, and we've had those. We have in Monticello and Montezuma Creek, we've built that, and they're heavily used during the day by our the elementary schools, and heavily used by the junior high and high school students and communities in the evenings. One of the things that I've had received more feedback about one topic more than any other in the last couple of years, and that is, when is San Juan High School going to get a bigger gym that will accommodate the crowds that are trying to participate in events there at San Juan High School? So I'm just wondering if we could do a different model in Blanding when we build replace Blanding Elementary, and do a PE room and look at replacing or building onto. I don't know if it would be a remodel at San Juan High School, but if you've been to ball games and activities at San Juan High School, you know that people are stuffed in there on those seats. The stairs that are marked stairs that go up for people to access different levels of the bleachers. People have to sit on the stairs. Their standing room, it's very crowded, very cramped. Is just the largest student population in the county, and the gym size just doesn't accommodate people. And so I think that we ought to at least look at what the possibilities would be to replace and or remodel that gym so that there was capacity for the size of student body and community that we have in Blanding.
So I guess you could look at both.
Yeah, there's.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
We're just all thinking from.
Okay. I know it hasn't been proposed, but I'm thinking, if we don't have that somewhere on the list for future, whether remodel or a complete rebuild of a gym, it's going to be many years into the future where anything like that is looked at, 40, 50, if we don't have it on this plan. And so I would like to look at what the possibilities are, what the options are. I have people who followed San Juan High School to other 2A and 3A. San Juan High School went up to 3A, then back down to 2A. And I'm told there's not another gym close to what we have here at San Juan High School. Now, I know we can't always, compare and or compete with other school districts and communities. They have different circumstances than we have. But the bottom line is that gym just is not big enough. And it's a lot of people don't attend things because you just can't fit. It's too crowded.
San Juan's problem is they got to quit winning all the time.
Well, and truly that's another thing that I believe is strong, and that there are a lot of things that are being done right. And it's to involve we're getting more and more involvement from a broader range of students at San Juan High School. I don't know if Ryan has, we can look at that in the future, that we're getting more and more people involved, which is, a good thing, but good thing for the community, good thing for these student athletes, and more people we can have involved, the better. But anyway, I would like to see some effort put into what that would actually look like, if that's something that we can include in our capital project plan in the future. Because we are stuffed to the brim. For anybody who's been in that gym knows how stuffed it is.
I think for the most part, this might be everything, but maybe there's maybe there's an exception somewhere. But I think all of these were on an original list, so the reason there's not, that's something I've heard a lot as well, is a desire for a larger gym in Blanding. And it's just never been on a list, but that certainly doesn't mean it can't be added to a list if that's a decision the board wants to make. We can figure out kind of a rough estimate of cost, plug that in, and with that involved in the list, the board would like to see that.
So, okay, yeah, I would agree. So tell me what you're gonna bring back for us next month specifically, based on what you've heard us say.
I think we'd be looking at bring back as superintendent mentioned, we'll look into the different options as to what what options we can go for the different projects, bring a priority list.
Yeah.
Of the projects that we have.
Would the board be interested in a presentation from any type of group that would come and would give us more information on bonds and San Juan County, the district bonding potential and all of that? Is that something that, I know I've had banks reach out to me and would love to come do something like this, and we've just never let them know that we're at that point to even see if the board wanted to, but maybe we are at that point, if that's something to be helpful. And I'm not pushing that route, I'm just saying it might be something the board wants to be educated
I
on.
think we need to see all the options.
Well, I really like what you've done here by going out 20 years, putting the different projects on there by year, having the revenue, the expenditure, the estimated end of year fund balance. And from this, initially, it looks like, even if we were to bring it all back to present value, it looks like our 3,140,000 savings per year might not cut what we need to do. It's not getting us there. But I would kind of like to see exactly what you've done here, but maybe a longer term vision with the 3,140,000, replacing buildings when they come due out in 50 years from now, and see really how far that 3,140,000 gets us over the very long term. If it's nowhere close, that we need to really seriously think about it.
Sure. Well, don't you think that too? If we want to put Blanding Elementary as our priority, that's another thing we need to evaluate what our priority was first. And if that's what it is, along with what you're asking, at least we kind of know. We're not even ballpark.
I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. We kind of have that through about 20 years. You're looking at further?
Yeah.
If we-
Last board meeting, I said put Bluff on the list, and we did. I appreciate that. Just the very long term. How much can we really do with replacing all of our physical facilities? The life of all the facilities, if we were to save $2 million a year. Today's dollars.
Yeah, the trick is, I guess you could try to figure a 4% forever. But the trick is knowing that when we're going to rebuild Bluff Elementary, what did you project, 70 years? Tom, was you projecting 70 years for a new school once we build it? What was your?
It's all there. Bluff is supposed to be rebuilt. I think the elementaries I did about 65 years, 62 years.
Well, the trick is just at that length, even knowing what we might be looking at costs.
Well, but we know what it costs today.
So we use today's.
Yeah. Let's see what the value of the dollar is. That will naturally open. So
And then to add one more big wrinkle, because it's a big wrinkle in my mind, and I will speak that I believe it is a big wrinkle, is staying, and it's going to just be a competing factors why I'm bringing it up now. It's nothing that'll be listed on the capital list, but staying competitive in a recruiting and a retainment mode with salaries will always, in my opinion, I think capital buildings are a great thing, and I think they will have some influence in recruiting and retaining. If somebody's deciding between this building and that building, yes. But salaries is what gets somebody even to come and look at us. It's what they check out before will even worry about, so, and we have seen, and I'm concerned about it because I've seen a drop from San Juan being very high on every salary list to middle range now with the possibility of even, I was told, we looked at that today for the first time, San Juan's salaries in the teaching area and the administrative is much lower than this, are below the state average now for the first time. So I just want you to know that I think that has some very far-reaching consequences. And the only reason I bring it up is because it's quite the balancing act to look at all this and see how overwhelming it is. And then to know also that there's another major factor that has to be balanced with.
So can we have both factors in play? We speak about this, but we have the other one. Why are we really need to speak about them both at the same time? It's what I'm thinking. We need to say, okay, well, how much we can allocate for this, and then how much do we need to allocate for this? Because I think we're making all the decisions on the building without that in mind, but we are not. I guess I'm not really sure what those figures should be and what we should have in mind with those figures when we're trying to make these decisions. Does that make sense? So I think we kind of need both, both sides. So we're saying, well, okay, yeah, well, we've got to keep this funded, then we can only move this much over. So how are we going to make the difference with the building if we can't move it all over? We've got to fund the other side. So maybe we need to have that information as well.
We'll at least keep that on here somewhere that we're looking at something.
And what those figures are. What's kind of recommended that we stick with and what we do each year. Because that would then be ongoing. So.
Yeah, I realize it's
a big elephant. It's a big elephant.
But yes, we do need to look at both, for sure.
Good feedback.
So, okay. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Carol. Super. All right.
I can just bring up some issues
Okay.
that
We can go till 4 on those.
I think if I were making a recommendation, I would ask you to maybe work through these and answer some specific questions and then jot down some notes so that when you get to the motion, the action item at the bottom of the list, you really give clear guidelines, because I have found out in some of these discussions, somebody says something that I really would like this, I feel this way. And it's hard to discern if that is the board speaking or if that's one opinion waiting to see if it is the majority of the board speaking. So anyway, keep that in mind. But I'll give you some recommendations and some things that will start us off, and then I think we can work through those. First of all, there is a proposed fee schedule on here of our sustainability fee schedule. And that reflects
Can you guys hear me? I just lost sound. Hello? Can you hear me?
support that, then of course we'd have to address that. But right now, that is being supported. So I would recommend that clause being added into the spend plans in all of our CTSOs. That makes sense? Questions to that?
No, Lucille, did you have any questions? Okay, Steve, did you?
Now, that 507 will not completely pay for all the national trip. The district would still be committing some funds, but that would make sure that, you know, the way it's written right now, you could have a fee waiver student that approached both. The district's committed, and they could also approach the foundation, and they could get fund support in both areas. So,
I do, on the sustainability fee schedule, the 10%, but I really, that rate of meal reimbursement, I really think it's to be about $12 instead of 11. I mean, it's not about the average gym.
certainly
I
do
just
it.
don't know that $1 is enough, because we have the 10. I don't know. Or makes that motion, decide that. So, Mary, you had a couple of concerns regarding that. She not on.
I think we lost our audio.
Okay. So, she did have a couple of, she did talk to me about a couple of concerns. One was, there's one spend plan that still has senior gifts at $100. So I think we just kind of have left that up to parents to do, because there's only one spend plan that has that. So the rest do not have senior gifts on there. And then.
So before we leave that, so if the board wishes for no senior gifts, that could be an easy part of the motion. That senior gifts are not to be part of any spend plan. That would put the responsibility of senior gifts 100% with parents. And that's fine. We don't control the parents. That's parents.
And then do you want to speak to the shoes?
Yeah, there is one that has shoes. There may be more than one. So also, I'll go in and remove any shoes. Shoes are not a fee waivable thing. They're not part of it. Now, we may on an isolated case work with an individual student, but they are not a fee waivable item. It's considered that most kids have some kind of decent, at least reasonably acceptable shoe to wear. And so the only time it can become an exception is if a coach puts it as it has to be a specific brand, a specific color, and they start to say it has to be very specific. Now it jumps over into a fee waivable because not every kid has that very specific shoe in their closet. And we want to make sure that's not there. But there is a spend plan or two that says cleats or shoes. I will have that taken out because it's not a fee waivable. There are some items in there that we will build a storehouse of, or we will have we'll store some items, like for instance, golf clubs. We're not going to buy golf clubs. We may buy them one time or twice, but we're going to keep golf clubs. And if we have a fee waive student, we'll be able to make sure they have access to.
Whoops, did I?
need to make sure we do it in an appropriate way. Many things, even in our choir area where sometimes they're asking for all the boys to wear the suit jackets that are dark and all the girls to wear something. We can help provide those. Spend plans.
That's just applicable for this year, then, it's not. I was thinking, well, let's put that in some sort of enduring document.
And part of the reason is the foundation could also change anytime they say, you know what, our funds don't allow it anymore. We can't support our national winners anymore. And all of a sudden, we've got to wrestle with really where are we at with this now that's.
Guidelines more than a policy?
We certainly could.
Kind of. Julie and Christy, I do have a question. When I don't know if there's several JV and a few that were not included in our books this year. So I'm just hoping that when they get to that sport, because those spend plans will have to come back to us and have a time for approval. So
if there's not JV for my region, that means they.
Yeah, there's a bunch that drop
Okay,
JVs.
okay, because there's,
That's fine.
I noticed that there was.
Ours did it separately, not Christian did it separately. You should have.
They didn't-
If you're my high school, but JV, if it's not there, we are not.
Okay, okay, because I thought there's quite a few that, and a youth coalition from Monticello High School, do you know anything about that? It was in a coalition plan. So anyhow, I mean, just to be aware, and then they could bring them through the summer, but we may need to just check again. that once these are approved, that they can go through and make sure that they have been covered. If not, they probably like to do it through the summer before school starts.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'll check on this.
okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. I did have that note, so. Let me see if there's any more on those, so. And
Can you hear me?
we can hear you. We just already talked about the things that you asked us about. And one other thing, I had a little bit of a question on MHS volleyball.
Do I have permission to speak?
Not yet, just a second, I'm calling you. They didn't have any shorts or Spanx, which is part of the uniform. That's not in their spend plan.
Okay, I'll check on that as well.
Shirts, socks, knee pads, or hoodie. So, yeah, and it could be in their spirit pack, I guess.
Well, we asked them to itemize their spirit packs.
Okay,
So I'll check
so
on that.
that might need to be an amendment after tonight, so. Kate, Mary, we talked about the senior gifts, we talked about the shoes, we talked about caps and gowns. What else we talked about? We talked about all the items on the, that were listed on the agenda, so go ahead if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I heard, I keep getting kicked out, so I'm not sure, all the details, but I did make a short list, and I think maybe everything has been mentioned, but when, if we're going to approve those today, then I guess we can just include that in a motion that we approve it, removing all shoes, cleats, tennis rackets, golf clubs. Because if I understand right, those can all be provided for use for students, but that they wouldn't be purchased. Well, baseball, softball gloves and mitts, same thing. So was that covered, and do we just need to include it in a motion to approve it with the removal all of those things, those items?
Now, the superintendent's gonna speak to that real quick.
Most of those items, other than shoes that you mentioned, for instance, tennis racket, golf clubs, those are fee waivable items. So we either have to provide those, or one way or the other, we have to provide those. We can either purchase those for individuals, or we can purchase enough of those to make available to the individuals. And that's been our plan, is to make them available, such as golf clubs, such as mitts. We've always had a plan that we're not going to buy just to have a kid pick out a mitt, but we will have some baseball mitts and some golf clubs. We'll have some caps and gowns available for fee waiver students, and we will store those items. Choir suit jackets and gowns, anything along those lines. But those are fee waivable items. So when we offer,
Right.
we have to show to the parents, we're not just showing what's fee waivable. We're showing to the majority of our parents are not fee waivable, and we're showing those parents what they will be responsible for. And that's as much of the spirit of this whole spend plan as anything is. Even if I'm not a fee waivable parent, I need to know if my child signs up for baseball, what is it I'm signing him up for? What commitment am I making? And that was one of the driving forces that drove this whole process to lead us to where we're at today, is that trend. So we will take out shoes because they're not fee waivable items. Shoes are not, unless you make the specific brand and a color and all of that, which we have had some coaches in the past do. So we want to watch for that, because there's been a time or two, you look out there and you see every kid on the basketball floor wearing the exact same shoe. The minute you see that coach made that a fee waivable item, because most kids don't have that exact shoe. So now it's fee waivable. But shoe wear has always been considered that kids have shoes. They're probably not the best shoes often, but they have shoes. So they can wear about anything they have. But yeah, we'll leave the others in there, and we'll just work out a system to make them available to students, and we'll work out a system so they're not in any way highlighted or any way what's the word I'm looking for, that made to feel bad or in any way put down through the
Right.
process.
So, okay, so I have a question. If they're left in there, are we responsible to provide those and actually purchase them for them? Or do we have the option to just have them available for use that year?
The option to make them available. We have the option.
Okay, so we're not obligated if they're on there to purchase that for the student, just as long as they have those available for participation, then they have, there's an expectation and a requirement actually for them to turn it back in at the end of the season. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
We identify what we're running that kind of a system on, and
okay. So what do we need in the form of a motion that's what? So sometimes we'll talk about something and feel like it's well understood in a board meeting, and that's what we decided on, even with a motion, with maybe a motion, or maybe the motion wasn't clear. Then we find out that maybe it didn't trickle all the way down to the schools and the program that's involved. And so what do we need in the form of a motion that says that will be the policy, or how we will work within our school district, that those will be available to students, but we will not purchase a mitt for them to have for their lifetime. We will have a mitt or a, baseball glove, softball glove, golf clubs, those kinds of things. So I feel like we need to be very specific in our motion, so that what we're talking about today actually happens in each of the schools and in those programs. Because sometimes, that's a struggle to get it all the way down to the program and each advisor and each coach actually practicing what the intent was at board meeting.
and how that's handled in the past, and the board could choose to look at it differently, but administratively, we have talked about spend plans and decided what items we were going to provide for our fee waiver students and store and just make sure they're available. And that's been worked out administratively, but if we want to go through and list all of those items, we could.
Okay, either way, just as long as, what's discussed here and the plan actually trickles down and is very clear, and somewhere there's a paper trail of what was decided and how that plays out, and that the program / coordinator coaches have that information as well. So
All right. Mary, it's about 4. We're going to have our presentations. Do you have anything else?
oh nope, I'm good.
Sure.
The Senate control in the club. Here it says gathering of nation 2 days.
Which school? What? Miss, no, which one is it?
The Senate control. It says gathering of nations.
Oh.
2 days.
Yeah, it's like a camp. It's a ticket. So they must have an event.
Yeah, they have it every year.
Okay.
So it's just like and that says up here overnight trips. Are they talking about the gathering of nations? Taking students over there?
Yeah, they're talking about this person would
Yeah, so this.
attend that.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
2
big
days.
event.
What's that?
That's a big event.
That gathering of nations. Christy, do you know more about that spend plan? This is the Miss Indian Broken Trail. Do you want to look at my book
Yeah.
and help Lucille a little bit with that?
It's a club at my course.
Okay, so she's talking about the gathering of nations.
It's to be the gathering of nations, not what it is.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it
it's part
says
of the club.
attending gathering of nation. That powwow is one of the biggest powwows in the world.
Yeah, you know where it's at?
In Albuquerque,
Oh,
Because they are planning on attending that for 2 nights.
2 nights.
so their motel and meals guy is included in that spend plan. Is that what that's for?
It should be.
Okay. So that should cover that cost. Did that answer your question, Lisa? Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I did talk to volleyball coach Kelly, and she says space needed to be on there, so we need us to edit.
Well, as long as we know,
We approve it.
let's just make it verbal that that does have to be on. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can put it in there since we have not approved it tonight, but
Does it change the dollar?
yeah,
Well,
then
sure
no,
it will.
she'll probably have to bring it back. So we'll omit that tonight and let's have it come back next month.
Okay.
So we'll need to see a clean copy of that if she would.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Okay. We are so happy to see our guests from the back. So who would like to go first? Rena, are you going? Come on up.
Rena's listed first.
You are listed first. We
I would
will-
like to know that I had to go first last time.
You know what? You need to call the superintendent that's right now on that agenda. No, right?
Let me
Right.
flip it.
So we are so happy to see you. Thank you. All of you here, that's something to be here. Wonderful. I kind of heard maybe it'd be virtual, but we're glad to see your picture here. So I'm just trying to get mine pulled up. So go ahead, Steve or Lucille, if you'd like.
Look at your celebrations. You said that you're offering new courses, CNA, digital arts and coding. I'm curious about what kind of response you've gotten from students from those courses.
The CNA courses, we've had about 4 or 5 students in it. And then we lost the nurse that was teaching it this last quarter, so we didn't have anybody this last quarter, but we are hoping to start that up for next year as well. But the kids have really liked it. We had a lot that were anticipating signing up for it because they can graduate with their CNA already. So I think that was fantastic. I'm gonna take this off.
Sure.
And then the coding classes have been hit and miss. They've been going over to the elementary as well. Our kids are going over to the elementary and helping the elementary kids learn to code too. So I think that was the biggest highlight on that. We're hoping to get more on that. And then the digital arts class, that one's been a success. And also robotics, we've done a robotics club and that has been amazing. The kids have really loved doing that and I've walked into some of the coding classes and the kids are in there coding the robots. They have it like zigzag and they're coding the robots to go down the zigzag and stuff and the kids are all involved and like it's just fun to see the hands-on that's happening in the classrooms with that.
So, and at the banquet, we heard about Tashina Clyde.
Yeah.
She was highlighted there.
Yeah, we're super excited to have a Gates finalist. So
Congratulations.
thank you. She does her interview on Friday and then she'll know by the end of the month. I think, whether or not she's selected. But they start out with like thousands and thousands of people and they narrow it down to 600 to be in the finalists. So she's in the 600. So that's pretty incredible for us.
How many scholarships they have giving? Just
I don't know how many, I think half. Yeah, I
Oh.
think the counselor told me half. So half of she's in a 50-50 right now. So 300 of them will be awarded. I know from my nephew receiving the Gates Scholarship that it will pay for a year to study abroad. It pays for all 4 years of their college. It gives them money as if they were doing an internship. So they're paid to go to college. So they don't have to work while they're in school. Like it's a phenomenal scholarship. And we're super excited. It's not just on academics, all the service that Tashina has done. Like she does a ton of service and has worked the last 4 years doing that, especially during COVID, chopping wood, bringing it out to families, to elderlies, delivering food. Like she's done some amazing things. So we're really proud of Tashina.
We don't see too many.
Yeah. Yeah.
And about some of your challenges.
Do you have a specific one or?
Your attendance.
Yeah, so when we went to red status, our attendance just dropped like crazy. I think people were scared going into red status. It is picking up now. We're getting back to where we were. Kids that chose to go online because they were nervous have now come back to school. So our attendance is moving up, but that has been a challenge this quarter because right when we got back from Christmas break, then we saw a huge drop there.
Anything else, Lisa?
Now, what about your behavior and access to marijuana?
Yeah, so we've really been trying to cut down on that. What we're finding is that a lot of the marijuana that's being taken from the students, it says for medicinal purposes. So we're not sure how the students are getting it, but it says that right on the bags or the vials or whatever that they're getting. And so I'm not sure how they're getting access to it, but it is the medicinal, but not prescribed to our student, but that's what it's saying on there. So we're concerned about how they're getting that. We did have the superintendent write a letter to the Navajo Police Department to see if we could get the drug dogs to come in to do that. So they said to request it and they would let us know ahead of time because sometimes that gets out. And so they'll just call that day and say we're showing it. And so the request is going to be. Thank you for writing that much. Thank you.
I know, it's kind of. Anything else, Lisa? Okay. So as I look at, obviously we need to congratulate on your celebration despite of COVID because you've had some serious challenges down there. And actually I noticed the progress towards your goals that you said is, I mean, they're coming along quite well actually. So can you speak a little bit more to the parent involvement and how that's coming and working?
Yeah, so that was our big goal that we wanted to get our parent involvement to increase by 3%. And when we met as a leadership team, we thought about, how we could do this. And we realized that something that maybe we haven't done well on is communicating the why and finding out what parents wanted to do to be involved. And so we sent out a survey and asked parents, and we did it during CCR day. So we actually just had the survey table set up and have parents comment on what they would like to see from the school and how they would like to support their students and stuff like that. And we got some great feedback. So we're eager to move forward with that and how we can support our parents. And our fall numbers to our spring numbers, we already exceeded that goal. So we're so excited about that. For getting parents there in the spring to the parent engagement.
So were they pretty willing to come to that evening? That's good.
Yeah, well, it was during the day. It's when we have the right. Yeah. So we had a lot of parents coming, and we scheduled them. We did schedule them to try to limit the number of people that were in the gym, and so we scheduled them according to advisory and when they would come. And most people stuck to the schedule, but there were those that just came whenever they wanted, and that was fine too. You're just happy to have them there. So
that's awesome. So I did notice with both schools the drop in enrollment. It's not like 10 students. It's like 50. And I mean, why the drop so much?
well, this is what we believe is the reason is, when COVID hit, the pandemic hit, it closed down all tourism, and the livelihood of our area is tourism. And so people had to leave and go find positions elsewhere. And that's what we're finding as we are talking to community members and stuff and finding out where they went and where their kids went. And they had to go find work somewhere else. And some of those, we thought when the pandemic was, coming to a close and we went back, we would receive them all back, and we still haven't received them all back. But you know what? Sometimes you get established in another area and maybe you like that job more, or you don't want to start all over coming back. And I wonder myself, going back into red status, even though they haven't shut down tourism again, I wonder if that would make someone leery who had gotten shut down before to come back. So I hope that we'll see that enrollment come back, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. So
Yeah, it's kind of sad. We're hoping
Yeah.
it will go back up.
hopefully your numbers will increase. So anyhow, okay. Mary, did you have anything? She's back on.
No, you covered everything. The questions have already covered everything that I was thinking, except for one thing. I just wanted to note, I appreciate that you said on the parental involvement that, that's already been exceeded, and that you're looking for and did the survey to know how to support parents. So I just want you to know, I really appreciate that, because I do believe the same thing. It's about us supporting them with educating their children, and not the reverse, that they're supporting us in our efforts that we're supporting them. And anyway, I think you're doing a great job. I appreciate everything that's happening down there.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We appreciate you coming and the best you're doing. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Right. Denise, you ready? Same to you. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it. Okay, and on the front of your presentation, is that a picture you took or is
Yes,
that?
I did. Out
It's
my back door.
beautiful.
It was amazing, huh?
It is, I've looked at that several times. It's beautiful.
Good luck.
Yeah, you did a nice job, so anyhow. Lucille, do you want to start?
Okay. On your challenges, on your long commute for students,
Challenges. I just think where the roads are so dusty and I wish the transportation, had smoother roads and we had a better support, partnership with the Utah Department of Transportation versus the Mountain Nation, because our roads aren't being kept up and we do get snowed in, the buses get stuck and so, it can become a very long commute. And one of my goals is I would love to have some hot spots on the buses where the kids could actually listen to, some books. We're working on that actually with the take-home Chromebooks, but we worry about sending a lot of Chromebooks home right now, where the kids are still using them in school. We don't have enough to send home and then have extras, but we're working on that. But that's one of my dreams, is to actually have something that they can listen to on the way to and from school.
we met with the HESI committee on Monday and we brought that issue up.
Good.
And so they're gonna work with the county to try and get that straight.
I said they were meeting with them yesterday and they were gonna sign a resolution that was
Yeah.
gonna allow San Juan County back on the road.
Back
So
on the road.
hopefully that went through.
And then your parent engagement. As we are still restricted.
Yeah, we're used to having parents in the classrooms volunteering, and we've really missed that. We've had to restrict that. And so our parents have not been in the schools. We did consider that for our APTT, the parent conference time, but because of the concern with red status and, everyone's still very nervous, they asked if we could do that by phone. And we did get some good response. Most of our parents, I'd say 80% of our parents did participate in phone parent conferences, and they were grateful to know how their students were doing. It wasn't how we normally do it, or how we would choose to do it, but we still felt like it was successful to both parents and teachers.
On your goals, you have social emotional, where 100% of teachers every day will implement a social emotional strategy. Curious what that looks like. What give me an example?
So it's mindfulness, it's grit, it's breathing, we, as you are probably aware, we've suffered a lot of grief in our community. And so that has been one of my highest priorities, is to make sure our teachers get the training, the social emotional training, to be able to support them. And I did bring show and tell. I did an elementary teacher, right? So our teachers created capes, and our students are working towards earning a cape where they will design it. This cape is, it has words on it. This is a superpower that I'm hoping to have someday, is to be able to use my words carefully. And so we talk continually about how our choices have consequences, how the words we use will affect how we perform. And so, once a month I come around wearing my cape or come with a lesson that they know for social emotional. I am concerned, I'll tell you, about the grief. I had a student in my office this morning, and she couldn't concentrate. And so I took out a piece of paper and had her color. And this is color therapy. And the colors that showed up on her paper, she probably went through 7 or 8 papers of anger. And black represents fear and very intense emotion. And we talked a little bit about it. She didn't want to open up. By the time, you know, I would just kind of write the words that she'd tell me. She only gave me a couple of words on each page, but I found out that she had lost somebody very special to her. And then the tears came, and that's kind of my goal, is get them to tears, because then we can kind of open up a little bit of space to feel again. And so one of my goals is to bring in a grief counselor to work with our staff and our students, and then hopefully the community in time. So this social emotional is key at our school, and I believe that's what's helping retain our teachers. I believe it's making us a strong unit, and it's keeping the behavior issues down. We still have them, but I don't believe as much as we could be or have had in the past.
And very well prepared.
Thank you.
Thanks for Kate everywhere.
Makes me feel better.
Carrie, do you want to go ahead? She's still.
Okay, no, I don't really have any additional or any questions. I appreciate hearing what I've just heard about the emotional, social, and you know, you get past that and then kids are able to concentrate. But I just know that that's a real issue. I wish it wasn't, but I appreciate what you're doing there.
I just want to, yes, and I reiterate what they have said about how much we appreciate what you're doing and the challenge that it is. And by the way, the book, I can't say the word, how do you say the word? I mean, I would assume that's how, but
Show and tell.
yes, it's a great book. I enjoyed reading it very much, and the experiences there. And so, yes, it was great. So thank you for sharing that. So we appreciate what you do, and maybe you could make us all a cake, and we all do very well.
I will make sure you get one and you can create your own.
It will be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So good to see you. Thank you.
And I just want to thank you for all you do for us and for being aware of our concerns out there. And thank you for the Q-tip teachers, our leadership team. I couldn't do my job without them. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, we'll go back to our agenda, and we are to number 5. Is that correct? Yes. The 150-mile forms. Does anyone have any questions regarding those? They'll need to be approved tonight. You know that? Okay. All right. Mr. Price. We say thank you.
Okay, so attached is the extracurricular handbook. As the board is aware, we've been working on revising that. It's been out of date, kind of antiquated for a while. Some of the major changes that we made are, it used to have all the forms, paper forms included in the book, and those are no longer being used. All the forms are on Register My Athlete or Register My Athlete for coaches. Really quickly, this is just a rough draft. I hope this doesn't take the whole 15 minutes we have allotted for it. Just kind of want to talk about the direction that we're headed and make sure we're going in the direction the board wants us to go in. We have worked as a leadership team and district directors, principals, and athletic directors to kind of try and, like I said, update this and get it more in sync. So the first thing I draw your attention to is on page 2. There's a couple of things highlighted and one sentence in red. Just want to make sure that the board doesn't have any questions about that. The classified employees may be assigned to work as coaches or advisors only with the permission of the superintendent. That's standard. We've had that in place for a long time. I could get into a big, long Fair Labor Standards dear colleague letter that explains our ability to do that, but we still have the ability to do that and feel like that's the right approach. And then licensed employees who are assigned to work in the elementary schools are not eligible. And we did that for consistency and schedule. Again, that's something that I guess the board could really weigh in on, but we're still recommending that. And then just encouraging when possible and where possible that we have licensed employees in coaching positions just because of the training that they've received. And, really coaching is one of our most high risk areas. So the higher trained people we have there, the better off we are. Questions about those three?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So when I first read this, I was just really wondering about the rationale behind the licensed employees at elementary school aren't eligible for high school. You mentioned scheduling, is that what we can do too?
So the reason that was originally invoked, I guess, or introduced is because of the importance of having that consistency in the elementary school setting and the time that teachers would be required to leave their elementary classroom. The administration at the time felt like that lack of consistency or having a substitute that frequently at the elementary level would be very detrimental. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Just kind of think of why that might be in there.
The superintendent was there when that was brought up, so he might have.
I would just say that's a decision that could always be revisited. I've known at least two pretty lengthy discussions at board meeting, and one of them was when I was a principal. So we're going a long ways back. And I had a very interesting pathway because I only thought I was a coach and that was it. I didn't think I was anything beyond a coach. And all of a sudden I'm a principal. But ironically, when I went from the high school to the elementary, one of the most profound differences was the environment. There were no athletics. It was really focused on instruction and all of the fundraising and the time out of class and the substitutes and the missing of games and the time to prepare for watching video and all of that you see in the secondary was not there. And that was a big change for me. And at that same time, there was a discussion of whether, and it had been building for a while before I became a principal. It actually was building when I was a coach. There'd been some elementary teachers that really were pushing hard to be coaches. And then I all of a sudden find myself on the other side of the fence as an elementary principal. And I came down actually of the opinion that I think we will definitely, if we were to revisit that and reverse that decision, there's some pros and they may be worth it, but the cons would be the environment of the elementary would definitely change because you'd probably see 2 or 3 individuals coaching, but brings a lot of things into your building just your environment. They'd be gone a lot. They talk, when coaches coach, they have to do a lot of things. You go in their classroom and you might see them on the phone working out a schedule because the game's going to get postponed today because there might be a rainstorm and they might be looking at some video. And I mean, we work through all of that and we have expectations in place, but it still brings a lot of different environments. Fundraising used to be probably more than now, but still it's a big part. Just a lot of it changes your environment. And I was shocked as to how pure the environment was in elementary schools. So that's where I know it was a discussion then, and they stayed with the elementary, couldn't coach. And then it came up one other time, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years ago, but we haven't discussed it in a long time. Now, finding coaches has gotten more and more challenging, and a decision made 10 years ago necessarily isn't the right decision today with all the variables. So I'm just saying that's where it is, and that's why it's where it is. And it could be revisited if the board would like to, if they feel that the time is right.
Okay, as we flip through it, we
Kelly.
taken the newest. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so on the classified employees, the way I have understood it in the past is that it is a liability to the district to allow classified employees to coach because they get over 40 hours a week, and then we are legally responsible and liable to pay them overtime for being over 40 hours a week. So as I understand it, it's just a restriction, that's why classified employees can't have those extra responsibilities because it will take them over 40 hours a week. And if something like that went to court, we'd lose and we'd be paying them overtime.
So I can clarify on that a little bit. If you look at Fair Labor Standards guidance, and the guidance from the Department of Labor comes out in what they call Dear Colleague letters, and they're letters that people have submitted to them, and they respond giving guidance to the public in mass. If you look into that, you can see that the issue of classified employees coaching is prevalent, and that the way that it is looked at from our point of view is that these coaches are volunteering and being paid a nominal fee in response. And that is the guidance from the Department of Labor. The only issue you have where you can get into the liability that you're talking about is if there is not a clear separation of their responsibilities between what they do as a classified employee and what they do as a coach. As long as there's clear separation, we can, under that protection, I guess, of the nominal fee, we are able to employ classified employees as coaches. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so if we're clear that way, I know it's difficult to find coaches, as Superintendent mentioned earlier, and it's probably a lot more difficult in our smaller communities than it actually is in Blanding. And so I would like to see things as liberal as we can to encourage those who are willing to coach to be able to, so that our students throughout our district have quality coaches and people who are knowledgeable. So, okay, thank you.
I feel like, and Superintendent can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but our classified coach, number of classified coaches has increased. But I think the system we have in place is working to review those and look at the situation on a case-by-case situation.
There's some positions that are, they fulfill a very distinct legal responsibility for us, especially when you get in the areas of IEPs and requirements and services that are legally mandated. And we are probably having a harder time even finding those individuals that are licensed in those areas than we are coaches. And so if we find somebody there, it's been very difficult because they're stretched so thin. And if they were to travel home at any community, to be home at 3:30 at any spot, and we are so spread out in this district that it literally would take 10% to 20% of their allocated time that day. And we are already very stretched to provide these services. So in some of those individual cases, we have just deemed we don't have there's just not the ability. We would be legally at risk here because we couldn't provide what we say we are going to provide. And that is a very high risk in some of the areas. So that's been a decision that has driven sometimes where we have said we can't allow coaching. But we have looked at these individual, like Matt said, individually each case and tried to be as relaxed and as allow as many as possible because we do recognize the challenge.
So just finishing out section 1, there's a couple of yellow highlighted spots. We're working on some language to incorporate the fee schedule or the fee waiver and spin plan issues.
And I want to stop right there because maybe, what Steve, you brought up there might be, that's where when I looked at this, I thought that this might be where some guidance could be put in a guiding document as to some of the things that that you were implying might be going to policy. They might go into this type of a guiding document for direction. Anyway, that's a thought I had. Where you'd say, this is where you'd say build your spend plans, but make sure you keep in mind no senior gifts, those kind of things to be spelled out here probably. So, anyway, just a thought.
And then just updating it, like I said, all the paper forms were antiquated and everything's done with register my athlete or register my athlete for coaches. Go over to section 2, authorized activities. This is where we have some significant changes. As you'll see on the 1A spread or chart there that shows authorized coaching activities. we have added girls wrestling. We've also, our recommendation historically, at our 1A schools, we have band teachers who are receiving a stipend for band and choir. They're getting 2 individual stipends. And in our 1A schools, band and choir events typically, normally, are on the same night at the same time. They do a concert and a band concert and a choir. So one of the recommendations that we're bringing forward is that would be down to 1 stipend for band and choir at the 1A level. And then if they had a pep band, there could be a stipend allocated to that underneath the flex position. Because that's above and beyond the band class and the choir class.
So now the number is, call me crazy, but so like girls wrestling 1 meets 1 coach, is that 1 position? Is that what this,
That's what that,
the numbers are reflecting?
and in administration, in our principal meeting, we talked about that a little bit. And we felt like the interest in girls wrestling right now probably only allocates one
Sure.
coach to that position. If girls wrestling were to take off and get, grow substantially, you could be looking at changing that number down the road.
So I was just clarifying that, what that number was for any.
Okay.
It's just that's how many positions for that particular,
Yes.
correct, okay.
Okay. And the other new addition is it was approved that we added a additional spot to cheer and drill so that they could have an assistant coach because of the number of students participating in that. And then student body advisor,
Yeah, those are.
student council advisor has been added.
Right.
Questions about any of the top half of that chart, those positions? Okay, so getting into the second part. So I looked up to date now, I forgot. But flex positions were originally created, as that paragraph says, to help with the enrollment and the fluctuation of 1A and the different activities they can have. In the past, flex positions have, well, according to this document, when it was made, in order to get a flex position, you had to come to the board prior to, or in the June board meeting, I believe, and get that approval for that flex position. I'm not certain when it changed, when we quit following that, but we have not followed that for a number of years. My entire tenure at San Juan School District. What?
I said that's before my time.
That's before our tenure. So we have come up with a recommended change to how flex positions are allocated. So what we would like to see is that there are 8 flex positions available to all 1A schools. And this here on our chart is a pre-approved list of flex positions that have already been brought before the board and been approved. And then we have at the very bottom, you'll see other. So if you flip that page, you'll see some new language there in red, and then a flow chart that kind of explains a decision tree that kind of explains how flex positions could be brought about. So the requesting school has an open flex position, and the requested position is on the approved flex position list, or the requesting school has an open flex position and has demonstrated a need as determined by the superintendent of schools. And then again, sticking with the language that the viability of the program is determined by the superintendent and no capital outlay funds. So what we're proposing is that we say you can use up to 8 flex positions at the district, and you will work through the superintendent to determine where those are and what your needs are. There's the 8 that are listed and already approved. If you have something else, for example, at Whitehorse High School, we have in the last few years had a ton of students come out for track, junior high and high school track, to the point or not, kids coming out for that. And they need more supervision. So they could ask the superintendent can one of my flex positions be an assistant coach here? The superintendent would be able to look at that, see if that need is established, and then therefore approve that as long as it's one counted as one of their 8 spots.
So just like that.
Okay, so that's a big change. We'll pause right there. Questions?
Now you got a nice flow chart though.
Thank you.
All of that. It's quite nice.
Okay, no questions? Okay, we'll go on to 2A. You can see that we've added soccer, a student body advisor there. Again, we increased the drill team and cheerleader, and then have one spot allocated for girls wrestling as well. 2A does not have flex positions. Okay,
Because you're just assuming they have enough to cover themselves.
yeah, because they don't typically have, well, again, when this was created, the idea was that the volatility at the 1A level with your enrollment and different interests.
Right.
With the 2A, you have a more consistent student body, perhaps. So they, and that's something the board could change, but
I think as we work through this club adoption, which we've still got to work through, it's still in the process, but we could have some, it could imply here that there could be a request for some of that to be available to draw upon these clubs that we might be willing to start.
and we are working on writing a club adoption policy. So just so the board's aware of that, that'll be coming to you the next month or so. Finishing that out, it's really just housekeeping from there on. We've updated the language coming out of the Utah High School Athletic Association. Big emphasis on sportsmanship and just the expectations set there.
And
When
do
it
the
comes
kids see that? I mean, I know it's expected, but do they really read that policy?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do the participants read that sportsmanship policy? Is that from Utah High School Athletic Association?
So
Do they read that?
yes, they should read that. They should be exposed to that through Register My Athlete.
Yeah.
The last thing that we're just kind of looking at updating a little bit and maybe putting some criteria around is our scholastic CTSO fine arts programs, things of that nature. Just ensuring that as intended, it is above and beyond your contract job. So that if you are Sterling Scholar or that you are meeting and doing things above and beyond your contract as a teacher to earn that stipend, so to speak. And then the timelines there. And that salary schedule is updated for the current salary schedule. Just to give you an idea, that's section 5, it's the last section, page 17. Just to give you an idea of what compensation looks like right now. I know that I've heard from coaches and athletic directors in different groups that that's something they'd like us to revisit. We're not revisiting it at this moment. If that's something the board wants us to do, I definitely take that under consideration. It is tied to the salary schedule is tied to the bachelor step 1, as mentioned there at the bottom of that salary schedule. So that's where we're at. Again, this is a work in progress. It's rough. We're still working to finalize everything, but just kind of wanted to bring it to you as an information item. Make sure that we're headed in the right direction. If you need to throw up a stop sign or redirect us, that's what we're here for. So with that, I'll take questions.
I think we kind of asked you a lot as you went along. Sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, nice work. Thank you.
Will I take the full 15 minutes?
You probably
Then
put
some.
16. All right, thanks, Matt. All right, audit committee member discussions. So according to policy that Tyrell has informed us that we have got to become compliant. Part of the audit committee would require that 2 board members serve on the audit committee. We can reach out to, correct me if I'm wrong on this, we can reach out to an outside source when needed. We don't necessarily have to appoint one at this time, but if we feel we need an outside source, we're welcome to reach out to someone, and I think that would be decided by the committee, or we would propose names and bring that back to the board. So this time, I've asked Steve if he would serve on that committee, and so we need one other member of our board to serve on that. So I'm kind of throwing that out there. If someone is willing to do that, or if not, I can just assign that. Whatever you would like to do. So any comments? Good. You're good with whatever we choose to do, Mary? And I'm happy to serve on that also. Mary? Well, it still says she does not have the time. Mary, I know serves on our district, or I mean our USBA. She does serve on the USBA. So, and then I could reach out to Nelson and see how he feels, but that's kind of where we're at with that. So Steve has agreed. And like I said, if not, I'm happy to serve on that. So if you're comfortable with that, we can do that. Or if someone else would like to do it, they're more than welcome to. Yeah. I think we'll just kind of go from there, and I will. Did you have any comments?
So will you be the other member on that committee?
I'll just do that.
Because we do pursue the Utah administrative law. We do need to post the members of the audit committee on our website. So if it's the two of you, that's fine. We'll just include the same information that we have on the board website page. There's that page that's on the website. We'll just create a page there on our website that's the audit committee. Just include the same information.
And you'll just put that on both of us. Okay.
Yeah. If
Sounds
that's
like we'll just move from there.
perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you. We should have just had you stay up. You're up again. Oh, you're just hogging that pulpit.
I feel like I was just up here.
You were.
Okay, just continuing on our effort to update our policy and make sure that we're compliant and current. I brought two policies today. They're both mostly housekeeping. Let's talk about 4120 first. The changes here primarily just update language, clean things up. There was some language in there that required specific people to do specific things, and we loosened that up so that there can be a designee. For example, the human resource director doesn't have to be in on every screening. They can have a designee, be that a assistant superintendent or a director or our human resource specialist. And the only other big significant change is that just to be in compliance with both our hiring preference policy and we are required to have a veterans preference in hiring. There on paragraph 5, we have 4120.3 paragraph 5. We have just put there that there will be an opportunity that the candidate indicate eligibility for Native American or veteran preference on our application. We've been doing that for some time now. It's just formalized right there. Questions about that policy?
Thank you.
Okay, 4121. This has a little bit more of a significant change if you look at the red line versus the clean version. So historically, our credential and records clause has been somewhat constraining, I would say, and quite frankly, we haven't been following it since the alternative routes to licensure came into play, and that was an alternative routes to licensure, academic pathway to teaching, and now we're on Appel, which are all alternative routes. So what this policy really does is it takes the onus of governing our credentials and records and puts it on the Utah State Board of Education. It says we will follow Utah State Board of Education licensing guidelines, and that way it's not something we have to bring back to the board every time that they change licensing, because they do change it quite frequently. That's a significant piece to that. Questions about any of that? So I do have these on here as a first reading. I did do an action item because, just to give you that option, because they are, like I said, mostly just housekeeping, so that option's available for the board if they want to.
Thank you. All right, let's just go to number 9, if you'd like to fix an update on the meeting.
Yes, I will. And Lucille, you can certainly, and Steve, you can certainly comment in here with any part that you'd like. I think you're aware, I've made you aware, the board, of the complaint that was filed with the Health and Education Human Services Committee for the Navajo Nation that was directed at our lack of a mask mandate in the mountain region schools. That would be the Blandy, Monticello, LaSalle schools. That's where the complaint started. And so, again, I was involved in attending virtually some of the meetings with this committee, and I presented with this committee and presented kind of an explanation of how our journey with COVID has transpired and where we're at today. At the end of my presentation, they still had a desire to meet with at least a representation of the school board. And so we did. We met on Monday. Steve and Lucille, myself, I had some individuals from the directors from the district as well. In there we had Brenda, we had Christy. Who am I forgetting? Is that it? Okay. Yeah, we had that group. That was the district representation. The committee showed up. I think they had 5 out of their 6 members. They also had a member representing their Human Rights Commission office, Mrs. Benally. And then they had some staffers that were also helping to facilitate the meeting. So we were able to start with, again, explaining that we have tried to navigate COVID by trying to comply with the state of Utah's guidelines and also the Navajo Nation's guidelines. And when those two align, that makes that challenge very easy. When those two go apart and travel different routes, it becomes very challenging, very complex. And so we explained that and shared with them. And in the end, I really believe they were very, very satisfied with the information they received. And certainly it led us to an opportunity to talk about many things. I think we probably talked about that official complaint for maybe, I don't know, half hour, but we were there almost 3 hours. And we talked about everything from our enrollment to our achievement. We covered a lot of ground with what's happening in our schools. We talked about our heritage language program, our Q-tip program. So we were able to talk about a lot of things and share with them a lot of information. In the end, I thought it was quite a very positive meeting, and I felt like it was quite a great statement on their part to travel all the way here to sit down with us and to visit with us firsthand about these issues. I thought that made quite a positive statement of their intent, and I appreciated very much having them in the district. I thought it was a great meeting. So anyway, Lucille, Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything to that from your perspective.
I wasn't able to attend the full 3 hours. I have to leave after about an hour. But, I thought you did a really good job of presenting, the issues where we stood and some of the struggles that we face. Just trying to satisfy this set of lives and this set of lives.
Thank you, Michelle. I just brought to their attention a lot of our needs that was here. And, what we do as parents, because I'm not to myself. And stuff like that. So, just stuff off of my chest.
One thing I would add that I thought was interesting, one of their other main focuses was to get a feel for how our board functions.
Yeah.
They really wanted to know if we collaborated and felt that there was real,
Work together.
cultural sensitivity and collaboration and understanding. And I felt 100% confident that we were able to answer that question very positively, that yes, there has been, there is. And this board has worked really well to try to see perspectives from different angles and different, and we've done so much in action, in pro-action to try to see the things that we're seeing and then to best provide the services out there in all areas of our county. We made a number of decisions that I think are very supportive of the board working well together. So that was interesting to me, that was one of the main focuses, was how's the board working?
Well, thank you for attending and taking care of that, because that's kind of been an issue for the last month with the emails, and so I do appreciate taking the time.
I'm assuming that it's gonna be a done issue. We'll wait to see what we hear.
Okay, thank you very much. Legislative updates. You're up.
Yeah, we're gonna start with these, and Tyrell's gonna kick one off. This is very fresh and very raw. There's still lots of details that aren't included in bills that have to get worked out in codes and in rules. But we wanted to give you a little update on some of the things that we think are of interest. And then as more details are available, we'll be able to get deeper in it. But Tyrell's gonna start with, and then I'll jump in after him.
Do you want me to just go over the three that we talked about?
Yeah, if
just
you want to
cover
take
it, maybe you'll finish it.
Yeah.
So just a quick update, Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 1 are just the base budget and amendments to education funding. And those are gonna give us that WPU increase, and those bills were passed at a 6% increase of the WPU, which is a healthy increase. So that's good for education. House Bill 162 is another bill that passed that could have financial impact on the district. It's to provide feminine hygiene products in schools. And there is a little bit of funding that's been provided through, I believe, the Larry H. Miller Foundation to provide dispensers in our schools. But as far as providing products in those dispensers, it'll be an ongoing expense of the district that we'll have to provide for moving forward. So just an update that was passed, and that is something that we're working on. House Bill 475 is what we mentioned a little bit earlier today. It is just a one-time appropriation that was given for capital expenditures. That was passed, and again, our preliminary allocation looks like it'll be around 800,000. The board will be approving what that money is spent on. And there was also 50 million put into a small school district's account that can then be applied for grants or for loans for projects. And so that there's still a lot of gray area there. There's still a lot of administrative rule that needs to be written on how that plays out and what that looks like. I was on the phone with the state earlier this week about kind of what that would look like, and they still don't know yet. But the bill was passed, and that is something that will be beneficial for the district as we are looking at capital needs. So just be aware of that, and that does provide a little bit of additional funding for us as a one-time appropriation.
Okay, a couple I'll point out. There were 3 or 4 bills that were aimed at curriculum in the classroom and parents' rights and how that was going to play out. Some of those were written even with the possibility of litigation, where teachers could possibly be sued if their curriculum wasn't posted and available. And so there was kind of a flavor of that in the beginning of the session. Only one of those out of 4 bills passed. There were 4 that were kind of targeted that. The only one that did pass was House Bill 374, and it was what they call the sensitive curriculum bill. And it's basically a bill that the state will provide a committee that will start to identify sensitive material that they will not allow to be in public schools. But then it feeds down to the local level, where there is information gathered either through the local school board or through some other committee to also determine what the community might classify as sensitive material. And that material can be eliminated from schools. There was some outcry on the opposite side of that as far as like censoring in our libraries. This might include some books that might even be considered classics in some forms. But So there's still, again, the vagueness is there in this as well to see exactly what that's going to boil down to, what determines all of this. But we'll wait and get instruction from the state. But that one bill did pass. The others did not. That more involved the classroom material. Those did not pass. So then I'd go maybe to there, Senate Bill 192, CPR taught in the schools. We now will teach CPR, or at least provide an opportunity. Well, all students in high school must, I think, receive a training in CPR. So we'll find out the details of how that works. That'll probably be embedded in the health curriculum. Senate Bill 251, Grow Your Own Teachers and Counselor Pipeline. There was already this program in place, but they have added to it and revised it. And we will see if that's something that we can, we're always interested in growing in our own teachers and our own counselors. So we'll see if we can benefit from that.
Is that like in the form of funding?
They allow funding for like a para to get some funding to go on and then become a teacher, or for a teacher to receive funding to go to classes to become a counselor. In the very late hours, this is one that just completely was off the radar, and I guess in the last 3 hours was introduced and passed and voted, and that's the student athletic participation, House Bill 11, and it's getting a lot of attention. This is a bill that is eliminating transgender boy who was born as a male participating in female athletics. There was a lot of discussion in even last year's legislative session, and then again in this one. This one's going to get, the governor has threatened to veto this bill, but there is a component of this bill that if the bill will stand if it doesn't get overturned in federal court, because states that are out ahead of us, there's 11 or 13 states that have already passed this very bill that they are now going through litigation to see if the higher courts are going to uphold it or not. So this bill is written in a way that if the courts uphold it, that's what would be in the state of Utah. If the higher courts do not uphold it, then the bill is written so that it triggers a commission. It organizes the commission, and the commission puts in metrics that this transgender athlete then would have to go before the commission and see if they meet the certain metrics. And if they do, then they would be allowed to participate. So the bill's written kind of in a two-part to see if the higher courts uphold what's in place and what other states are out ahead on, and then if not, to try to turn it to a commission. But if the governor vetoes it, it'll all go back to the drawing board. So we'll see what happens with that one. House Bill 30, Student Tribal Regalia Use Amendments. That passed, and that's something that, as I spoke earlier, we have very much encouraged and delighted from seeing our students that are represented in their culture regalia. So that's very positive. House Bill 193 is one that we're going to learn a little more. Full day kindergarten. It was one of the higher priorities. It had a very high fiscal note attached to it. And in the end, it just kept getting dwindled down, revised, and the fiscal note kept getting reduced. And now it did pass, but it passed with a very, very reduced fiscal note. And we're not sure how that's going to play out. We believe it now is written so that it's optional. But in our district, we already have the option of full day kindergarten in all communities but Monticello. And even in Monticello, we've gotten a little bit creative at times. But Blanding and in all of our river region, we certainly have had full day kindergarten options for 20 years in certainly the river region. So anyway, but we'll look at that. The school fees amendment, House Bill 211 that we talked a little bit about, that would have provided some financial help in the area of curricular fees and co-curriculars. That bill did not pass. So just be aware that if you remember us talking about that, that did not pass. And then House Bill 396 will be just a little bit interesting as we learn a little more. It did pass, and it's a bill that pays our licensed teachers at the school level 32 hours of extra work hours. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that, but this bill will provide financial support, and we're not sure if it's at their daily rate of pay, or if it's at an hourly rate or a daily rate. But we are gonna learn more, but this could be a bill that it requires educators to write a plan on the very beginning of the year, and then to implement that plan, and then by the end of the year to show how they've implemented their plan. But in the process, they can be paid for 32 hours or 4 days of extra work. So we'll learn a little bit more about that one, but that one did pass, and we'll watch it. So those are kind of the bills that we're targeting and looking at carefully and watching. So unless any other questions or comments on that or any other bill?
No. Okay, thanks for the update.
You bet.
And I'm sure we'll see you all come into play.
Yes.
Okay, we saved you for last.
Okay, let's have a party then.
All right.
Kick this party off. So just as a quick clarification, because I know it's an action item on the spend plans, the San Juan Youth Coalition for Monticello High is combined with the Hope Squad. And it's easy not to know that because they just put SJYC.
Okay.
So it's there. So
Okay,
we're good
thank
to go.
you.
We're good to go on that one. So volleyball is the only one that we'll update and bring back. Policy 5410, educational experience. This, the reasons for recommending some of these look like simple changes, but actually have a big impact on student opportunities in this policy. But the reason for it is really with career pathways, they're going down into the elementary levels now. So not just high school 9 through 12, but we're offering experiences, and you'll hear me refer to as career explorations. And those are being offered clear down into the elementary level. So we've come upon some situations where we really want our students to have these opportunities. We have teachers that are excited about offering these opportunities in the junior high level. So for instance, FFA and becoming a charter in the junior highs, not just at the high school level, so that they really get experiences, leadership experiences, communication experiences, hands-on experiences, whether it's FBLA, whether it's HOSA, whether it's FFA, any, Skills USA, any of those CTOs really contribute to building students holistically and giving them opportunities to participate. So as we're having these opportunities arise, we're recognizing that in our policy, it's a little outdated if we're going to stay up with these opportunities for students. So what we're really proposing here is just in 5410 down on C, you can see in the red there, everything is the same except for the red, and where it says an exception to the ban on overnight travel may be granted for students in grades 4 through 8 who are, and we would add, invited to be recognized as a charter or CTSO, so career technical student organization, or earn the right to compete. And we didn't have regional on there before, so we'd like to add regional. That's important, state or national competition. So basically it would give us the opportunity to, as site by site and organization by organization, if these opportunities come up for a student where they're in, any grades 4 through 8 and they're participating in FFA, they participate in a regional competition and they win, that we would approve school by school and organization by organization that they could attend those competitions. So that's really what that's about. So this is really a first read. So we know that we put it on an action item. If you don't have any questions on it, if you do, we can definitely bring it back. But
All right, any questions?
Well, I guess I just have one observation. I guess I'm a proponent of spelling out acronyms.
yes, I'm going to do that. Actually, Gina and I, after we talked about it, I'm like, oh, we should have spelled that out and then put it in the parentheses. So we will do that when we type it in the policy. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, so we completed our work session and there's 2 items for closed. If the board's had time to look at those, and if you feel a need to go into closed session, we can go into closed session, or if you feel what you see, we can, well, and let me go back. Real property, if there's no need for discussion based on the content that you read, there's no need to go into that. And personnel, if you approve the list, there's no need to go into discuss them. So does anybody need? So I'll open up. Does anybody make a motion to go into closed session to discuss either item? Good job, Noel. Okay. All right. Well, we have a break. Until 6, and then we'll come into our consent and our awards. Thank you.
Guess Matt should have talked longer.
No, I would agree. Okay. Yes, we're also and we appreciate the opportunity to recognize those who work so hard in our district. So Christine is, where's Christine? Oh, right there you are. Yes. Will you come up, please? And join us at the front. We're so glad you're with us. No, you're okay. You're right.
You gotta come right over here by me, Christine.
Can you take a picture? You're welcome to. And I will wear it.
It's okay. Thanks for all you're doing. That, just on.
Okay, so this nomination comes from Brenda Whitehorse, who said, Ms. Rock is a creative heritage language teacher who cares deeply about the quality of learning her students are getting with the Navajo language. She engages them and creates creative activities for her students at TES. And this other nomination is from excerpts from colleagues of yours. So, and Christine Rock is the embodiment of wailing in beauty. She takes careful aim at what she is teaching her students and is prepared to teach them, even when they are not in the classroom with her. She's extremely accommodating and treats others with great respect, even when she is stressed. Good job. She still has time to share a smile and listen. Christine Rock is an excellent heritage teacher. The students enjoy learning Navajo. She teaches our, is that right? Hojo? Hojo, I even practiced the next little bit of it. Hojo core values using her students' traditions. She always has a smile, even though she has students all day long. She never complains and she lends a helping hand. And lastly, Christine is always looking for ways to present her lessons to all the kids. She even made the effort to teach our deaf students teach the other students American Sign Language with the words they are using in their class. Amazing. Good job. Thank you. Congratulations. Oh, yes, that's her paper. Congrats. Thank you.
Then just stand up right here.
You ready?
Yes, thank you so much.
So proud of you.
Thank you. We're so glad you came.
Which one's this one?
Nelson on?
Okay, she's gonna be virtual. So
Wait, is Nelson on? Okay.
he is on, yes. Just read loud.
Okay, I have Marilena Yelloman, TES librarian. Always going above and beyond for our first graders. Ms. Yellowman is always enthusiastic about her task and the students love her. Nominated by Lovinia Holiday. Marilena is always positive when working with students. She goes above and beyond for them. She works hard to make our science and tech lessons fun for everyone. She is always so kind and helping with breakfast and lunch duties. She makes library time so much fun. We are so lucky to have Marilena at TES. Nominated by TES staff.
What's that? Tell her we missed her, but we appreciate her.
Misty Roman.
Bowling shoes on.
The bowler. She'll be looking for you if you got out of the
Misty was nominated by TES staff and the principal. Let's do the TES staff verbiage first. In Misty's time at Monument Valley High, she has implemented a number of programs to support the social and emotional well-being of our students. She has started a Hope Squad, Goals for Girls, provided seniors with ACT, FAFSA, and college application supports, and has been an active member on our MTSS team. We're happy to have Misty join our MV team. Next one is from the principal. Misty is an outstanding administrator. She is so kind and gracious with parents and faculty and helps them with whatever they need. She is a professional in every aspect and keeps our school organized. This is amazing as it is her first year in this position. We're truly grateful for all she does here at TES.
She's been at both schools.
Okay, and then the last one nominated by J.C. Lee Chatty.
Jody.
Jody.
Jody Chad.
Misty is such a valuable person at TES. She has taken on a huge job and has done it with finesse, professionalism, and a smile. Congratulations.
People are talking about
I love my job. I love it.
it.
Thank you.
do.
Thank you so much. We now have public comments. You're welcome to stay through the public comment, or you're welcome to leave. And when you do leave, don't have too much fun. I can see this ladies, so thank you. Okay, we'll just give you a second to exit. Thank you. We're glad you came. They made some order tonight. It's awesome. They were fun. Yeah, it was sweet. All right, so for public comment, we allow 3 minutes, and I'll set the timer, and then you can speak. And usually we do not respond to your comment as a board. However, if there is just a clarification, or there will be on one of these emails tonight, we will make that quick clarification. Christy will be making that. So, Kristen, you can come on up, and I'll set my timer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you can go.
So no teacher expects to be rich, but they deserve to be comfortable. And with the healthcare costs being what they are, which I know is nobody in this room's fault, it's a very complicated issue. But with teacher wages and the ratio of costs of healthcare and insurance in our district, the wages are becoming unlivable for families. And as a result, many of our best teachers are considering moving to other rural districts, and many have moved to other rural districts where the benefits are just a little bit better, so it makes the wage more affordable. And just to give an example, my husband's a teacher at ARL, and 20% of his paycheck is going toward insurance and our HSA. And even though we've been contributing $450 a month to our HSA since September, our balance is currently $296 is all. That's just how much things cost. It's unaffordable, and I know we're not alone. We have several different friends and families in town who have talked about things like diabetes or emergencies or life lights and those kinds of things that have made it so they've had to refinance their homes or go into debt in order to be able to afford
some of these things that are happening. So just as the #1 employer in our county, I know that you can raise the standard of living for our entire county. I know it's not easy and you're doing such a great job, but we just ask that you consider these families that really are struggling to make ends meet, even though they work so hard to provide and teach for our kids. And I thank you for all you do.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, Eva, you can read the emails.
Okay, the first comment is from Lanil Nakai. She states, as a parent with athletic scholars, I would suggest increasing the scholar meal amount to maybe $15 to $20 a meal. When you add things up, some scholars that qualify for the fee waiver never have the extra money to pay when meals are now costing more. The only place you can afford a meal on a bus trip would be McDonald's or Burger King. If that amount could be revisited for the next school year athletic scholars. Thank you, Lanel Nakai. The second comment is from Joni Dixon. She states, as a coach for Whitehorse High School girls basketball team, my input for the proposed spend plan is that the rate of meal should increase to at least $15 per meal. We've noticed that in most restaurants, meals cost a lot more than the $10 that players are being allocated. They typically get help from other teammates or the coaches. Because of this, they ultimately spend their money before it covers all the meals they are initially given money for. Thank you, respectfully, Joni Dixon. And the last one is from Caroline Johnson. She states, to whom it may concern, here are some suggestions and concerns. The first, one of the ways to cut down on spending costs is to have no school Fridays, have school Monday through Thursday. The second, another concern is that Whitehorse Junior High and high schools need new uniforms for all sports. And the third is lunch is a concern for junior high. They only have 20 minutes to eat lunch. This is not healthy. Thank you, a concerned parent. And I think Christy Fitzgerald was going to address one of those comments.
Yes, just to clarify, so Whitehorse High School and Monument Valley High School both do have a separate junior high lunch. It is 35 minutes. It runs from 11:10 to 11:45. Just of note as well, Whitehorse has had an expanded enrollment. We have over 100 junior high students, so 7th and 8th graders. So moving that many students through the cafeteria could take longer than we have in the past. So that may be so.
Thanks, Christy. Right, anything else? Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move to our consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're gonna go to our possible action items. So COVID-19, we do not need to do anything on that. I think we gave you direction on the capital. So we need to approve the extracurricular 150-mile trips, so I need a motion.
Motion to approve the extracurricular 150-mile trips.
Okay, motion by Lucille,
Second.
second Steve. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, then the proposed land trust due dates, which we discussed, we just need an action on this. So I need a motion.
I move to approve the proposed land trust due dates.
Second by Lucille. All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? All right, we have San Juan School District policies 4120, 4121. Those were the teacher policy and
Credentials and records and the hiring practice.
so
I move to approve San Juan School District policies 4120 and 4121.
All right, motion by Mary. Second by Lucille. Any discussion?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead, Nelson.
on 4120, page 2, number 5. I just would like to get a clarification on candidates that are eligible for Native American and veterans hiring preference.
Okay, as you know, we have, like per district policy, a Native American hiring preference, and then per state law, we're required to have a veterans hiring preference. We have been trying to capture that in applications for some time now. Last few years, all this does is formalize that will be part of our application, so that going forward, it's kind of a guiding document for when we modify the application process, that will include an opportunity for people to declare eligibility for either one of those preferences.
Now, how are they notified? Is that on the application, or is that just an assumption that the candidate will bring that to your attention?
The candidate has the opportunity when they fill out an application. The applicant has an opportunity to select whether they are eligible for either one of those.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I just wondered how that was processed.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Obviously not. All right, the 2022 provisional contract renewals. So the list that was before you is the contracts that are being renewed now. So if we have a motion for that.
I motion to approve 2022 provisional contract renewal.
Okay, motion by Lucille,
Second.
second by Steve. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then we need a motion for the 2022-23 San Juan School District Program Sustainability Fee Schedule.
I move to approve the 2020, let's see, 2020, excuse me, sorry, I'll start over. I move to approve the 2022-2023 San Juan School District Program Sustainability Fee / spend plans with the, and to include that we do not approve any senior gifts for students, and that all shoes and cleats be removed from the program as from the spend plans as well.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion? So, oh, go ahead.
Okay, I move to amend the motion by also approving the modified sustainability fee schedule is based on the 10% increase. Also to increase the meal allowance to $12 and add a provision for national events on the spend plan, the wording of which would be delegated to administration to specify assistance from the San Juan Education Foundation of $500 for West Coast travel and $700 for East Coast travel.
Okay, so we have an amended motion. Now, wait a second, what we do here?
It's a new motion, so we consider it just like we do.
Wait, do we need a second on that? Yeah, so I need a second. So Lucille has a second on the amended. Any discussion?
Can I have a discussion there? So did
Yes,
your
go ahead.
amended motion include the no senior gifts? And
Yes.
issues included?
It's in addition to what.
In addition, okay, very good.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
I,
Then that takes us back to the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
What we just voted on was the wording.
So then we have to go on the beginning.
No,
All right.
we haven't voted on the action motion yet.
Okay. So we voted on the wording. So now we've got to vote on Mary's motion. So all in favor? Aye.
I,
Good job, Steve. All right, and lastly, San Juan School District Policy 5410, which is the short memory I've got.
Student travel.
The student travel. All right, so if I need a motion to approve that policy.
I motion to approve San Juan School District Policy 5410.
Motion by Lucille. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's the majority on that, so. All right, okay, information. Oh, yes, I should. Thank you. Mary, did you or Nelson approve that policy or oppose?
you didn't ask for an opposing vote,
I asked for you.
but no, I voted in favor of that. I just must not have hit my mute, but yeah, we probably should have a all in favor and any opposed on each of them, but yeah, I'm in favor.
But I just missed that.
I'm in favor too.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we're to information items, superintendent.
Just quickly, spring break is coming right up next week. It's gonna be next week. School will be dismissed that week, and we hope for a nice and a safe and a relaxing week for our staff. You should have received information on the USBA 2020 Spring Regional Meeting. That is March 24th at 6 p.m. in the district office. You received information on that? The board can make that. That's been in Moab the last 2 years, so it's nice it's coming back here. And then our next board meeting is April 13th, 2022. That's scheduled for right here in the district office. So we'll be back shortly.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attendance and your help.
Thank you. Amended the motion.